Hey guys, what's up? This is McAllister's podcast. I'm your host as always, Coleman McAllister, coming to you today with a guest episode. It's been a little bit, but I love when this happens, and the man that is sitting here today is someone that's come through a couple different times, and I feel like I always learn something when I talk to him. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jason Benell, president still, right? Of the Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers. How you doing today, man?
I am doing all right. Thanks for having me back on.
Hell yeah, as always. So I guess let's right off the bat, something that I saw about what you're doing I thought was really, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of other things that you've been doing. Like you said before we started, you're a busy guy. You got a lot going on. But one thing I thought that was really cool that your organization did, or at least the one time, I don't know if you continue to do it, but picking up garbage, essentially, like kind of doing like the community cleanup and stuff. So like, what started that? How was that experience? And like, what else have you guys been going, what else has been up since you've last come on?
Yeah, well, that's our trail cleanup. We work with the city of Des Moines to adopt a trail.
Okay.
This was born out of the Adopt a Highway program that used to, well, I think it still exists, but we used to have Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers had a stretch of the interstate out by West Des Moines, and then they went and widened it like 10 years ago. One, that was an awful area to work on the interstate, and then they didn't give it back. And so we're like, well, we don't have anything. And then I'm like, we use bike trails and they're visible and people want to use them. Let's adopt a bike trail. So we did. And so at least 2 times a year, but usually 4 times a year, we go out there and we pick up the trash and make sure it's nice and work with the city. And we have a little sign up there, and it's community service that we just do, volunteer.
That's, I really appreciate that, man. Because, obviously we're both atheists. We've been on here plenty of times criticizing, churches and Christianity and all that. I could be wrong, but I don't think I ever see that a church do that. I don't think I ever see a church like actually go out and be like, okay, we're going to go clean up, public area or area that everybody uses or whatever. If anything, I feel like they probably just, maybe they clean their own property. I don't know. But like, I feel like I never see that advertised. So I think that's, another trait that makes you guys so, I like the community orientation that you guys have to your organization. So
yeah, some churches do. They do things in other ways. I don't want to bash all churches and say they don't do any volunteer work.
Sure.
However, the avenues open to churches is a little different when you're around for 100 years, right?
Yeah, and
you have tons of money, you have a building. Your community service might look different, and it might be more pointed towards your own community versus doing an open one for everybody. So I appreciate that, because I think that is probably true.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, and it makes sense to an extent, right? Like if you are getting donors from something, it's obvious that you're going to help that. But I mean, your organization, you're not really interested in that. You're really just coming from what I can tell, a really benevolent place. Yeah. Like, hey, we really want to help the area as a whole, not like from what I assume is most of the church's perspective, which is like, okay, we need to like keep our constituents and the people that attend our churches, we need to keep them happy,
Yeah, we do it because it's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
To your point. And I mean, if we had more money and more people and more capital, we would do more. We would open up the pantries, and we would do that. We have a lot of people who would love to do that. It's just the material conditions aren't such that we can right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's hard for. I mean, it's really hard for any organization to like. I mean, I guess unless you're the church, but like if you're like a private, a more volunteer-based organization like yourself, like I can imagine that it's really hard to get to the point. I mean, to get people like in your community as a whole, like in general, to get together and do that. Like I get, like if the McAllister's podcast tried to do that, like I doubt we'd be able to have the reach that you guys do, right? So I mean, that's impressive in itself, but like just the fact that I guess one of my point is it takes a lot more work, I feel like, for an organization like you guys to go out and do that. It takes a lot more commitment. I mean, I feel like name any church, I mean, it would not be hard for them to round up however many people, right, to go do that. Like, I just can't imagine that being as big of a challenge.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I mean, everybody that does it with a group our size, we do it because we want to, not because there's an obligation to. I mean, to your point, if a church says, I'm not going to do this event, I'm not going to show up to this one because I don't want to. Yeah, there's going to be other people who are there to do it as well.
Sure.
Or their building, for example, is still there. So it's not like a missed opportunity. They can just go back and do it tomorrow, Whereas we have to, kind of pick and choose where we want to put our efforts. But we do it voluntarily because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Do you ever, like, I can't imagine there would be, but, like, have you had any pushback like going out and doing these events? Like, have you had like churches or like public officials be like, hey, we don't want the Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers, you know?
Yes, actually. Wow. Our sign was actually vandalized last time. Not this time, but the one time before, at the end of last season.
Oh, geez.
You know, the sign's up on a post and somebody had taken it and bent it so you couldn't read what it says. And
very
I don't
Jesus
know about
like.
I've never seen any other volunteer organizations bike adopt a trail sign. So weird that just ours is the one that got that, right? So that kind of stuff. A lot of times folks will have up you know, like a barrier, like, oh, it's the atheist, or same thing with like the Satanists, like, oh, but like we're people like anybody else, man.
Sure.
You know, we just want to do their good thing. Want to do a good thing.
Yeah, well, and you know, this actually kind of gets into a good point that you know, I was talking to you about this before. I think it'd be fun because we both watched the Jordan Peterson Jubilee thing, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through the claims on that, kind of give our takes on that. Sure. But I think this is a problem that a lot of Christians have when they will paint the atheist a certain ways, because, and I explained this in a previous podcast, like, to be an atheist, really the only prerequisite you have to have is that you don't believe there's a God, or at the very least you think there's the chance of a God is extremely low. I mean, like all the logic is stacked up against it, right? But to be a Christian, you have to like, if you're going to say I'm a Christian, you have to adopt a certain set of principles. Like on the abortion issue, right? Like if you're a Christian, you kind of have to be that pro-life. Now, there are people who will be like pro-choice and they'll say they're Christian, but like I think you and I can both realize that there's kind of a hypocrisy in that. But like as an atheist, you could really have like any point of view on that, and it doesn't contradict you being an atheist.
Yeah, I have a whole presentation that I go out and give to groups that is exactly that. Because atheism is just not a theist, you know? Just like, and I have a slide in there, like, are you a unicornist? Do you believe in unicorns? Do you think, and not only do you believe in unicorns, do you even think about unicorns? Is it part of your life? No, it's just something that's out there that's like a fantasy thing. That's how we see God. It's not like we're sitting, it gives you a box that you're in. It just means you don't believe in God.
Yeah.
There's people who have all sorts of different political and social views that are atheists. And I mean, to your point with the Christians, the problem with the Bible and Christianity in general is you have people who can use it to argue both sides of an issue, and they both would have some kind of interpretation that would make sense. And I think the only rational thing to do is, like, if it doesn't make any sense either way, then just throw it out and go with what works, which is reason and rationality and the consequences. Forget about what they thought 2,000 years ago. That's kind of dumb.
Yeah, well, and you know, going into the Jordan Peterson thing, I think this was kind of like, and you probably acknowledge this too, like there was so many points in that debate where Jordan Peterson would like there's one point he framed God as being consciousness or whatever. It's like, you know, I don't know if I've ever talked to a religious person and have had that be so, like, you know, I think somebody correctly pointed that out, like there is something really disingenuous. It's like you're not going to actually engage with like what everybody understands as God, and you're just gonna like kind of sidestep, be like, oh well, it's actually this, and it's like, okay, well, I don't like, are we even really gonna like disagree with that necessarily? Yeah, you know what I mean?
I watched, and I mean, now full disclosure, I think Jordan Peterson is just a pernicious dumbass. I think he is not. He is what I think dumb people think a smart person is supposed to sound like. And sorry if there's any Jordan Peterson fans out there, but if you look at any of the things he says, and I think that 20 atheist verse 1, they actually changed the title of it. I don't know if you
oh my God, yes, I saw that. It was one Christian versus 20 atheists, and then like 4 hours later, probably because he threw a big fit.
He threw a fit, and he's dishonest. I think he's really good at gish galloping and at, you know, retreating from whatever he says to try to find another way to get you to spin your wheels. And you can, if you ever go watch it, if you're watching this, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
basic questions. He's like, well, what do you mean by that? It's like, okay, so we're going to spend 20 minutes talking about what a water bottle is before you'll answer whether you want to drink it or not. You know, that's how he is.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what the word was, but it was some like, he was, I think it was like higher or something like that. He's like, what do you mean by higher? I'm like, are you in 4th grade? Like,
yeah, it's a higher being. So, and if you watch his debate, there's nothing that you could say that wouldn't fit.
Yeah,
what he says. Well, you worship that. Okay, so if I prefer chocolate to vanilla, I worship chocolate. Well, no. Well, then that's what you said. You just said if it's a preference. So now you're walking it back. You don't know what you're talking about. Very frustrating.
My favorite one, I was rewatching clips today, and there was the one where he's like, do you believe like the belief in the pen? He was like, okay, like I believe that this is a pen. And he's like, would you die for this pen? He's like, don't be so sure.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay.
He immediately goes from 0 to 11. Yeah. How dare you say that to me? Like, all right, Jordan.
Yeah, I will say that because early in, like, I would say, like, when he was like rising up, I did find a more value in what he said, like the thing, like with the clean your room thing. Yeah. Like, I know that a lot of people talk shit about that, and like, fine, but like for me personally, I actually did improve my life by cleaning my room. Like, there's something to that where it's like, you know, if you want to declutter your mind, if you really want to make an impact on the world, like focusing on where you're at, like you're going to have way more success in that than like if your mind is disordered and your room is disordered, than trying to make a change, you know?
Yeah. Advocating mindfulness is what he and a lot of other self-help folks say is rarely a bad thing. Advocating mindfulness, which is clean your room, take it slow, you know, focus on what's important to you.
Exactly.
You know, take care of those around you. Those are all good things. The problem is they kind of stop there and just forget that there's externalities out there. Like, no amount of mindfulness is going to get you a bigger paycheck, right?
Yeah,
no amount of mindfulness is going to make a natural disaster not hit your house. So you have some external things out there. And I just want to throw this out there. You like the clean your room thing? Did you see him doing interview way back then, which kind of ended his authorship career?
No.
It might even be where this image is, where he's crying.
Where he's crying.
But I mean, no.
Let's even look that up.
It's way back in like when he was rising and good, and then he had an interview, and his room was just filthy. It was really, really bad. If you Google like Jordan Peterson dirty room, he's sitting there giving this advice, and then you can see he's got food wrapper. I mean, not like an empty water bottle like he's drinking it. No, it's like day-old food wrappers. They're half-eaten steak. You know,
that's really funny.
Bad. Ooh, that might have been a picture of it in there.
Well, yeah, let's just pull up that picture.
To the second picture right there. That's it. Look, does that look like somebody who's following their own advice? That's awful. And
I had a bad day.
And depression's a hell of a thing. But for him to make a career telling people to clean your room and get better, and then, you know, here he is giving an interview. Come on, man. At least put on like the what do you hide your background?
Yeah, the green screen.
Yeah,
you're too lazy to throw up a green screen that day.
Do a photo effect or something. Yeah.
Well, no, and I mean, I think it is a fair criticism. Like, if you are gonna, like you said, like have a career based on that, like no matter what line of work you're in or whatever your ideology is, like you better like profess that, or people are gonna call that out. You know. But so. Let's actually, so Molly, in the notes, you want to just pull that over, and I actually just wrote out the different claims. I thought it would, like I don't know if I said this already. I thought it would be fun for you and me to just kind of go through these claims, and just kind of, I guess mostly you since you're the guest, but like you just kind of give your interpretation of that, and then maybe I can respond or whatever.
Sure.
So first claim, and this is from, if you guys don't know, this is from the Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists video. These are the 4 claims that he makes in that video.
He makes them,
yeah. Atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting.
Yeah, there's nothing. This is what I was talking about with the equivocation on the words. You know, there's nothing he can say that wouldn't make him right. Because if I say I reject God, he can make up some new definition. The question is problematic out of the gate, though, because to reject something doesn't mean you have to understand it. Like, I don't understand Shintoism. So am I rejecting Shintoism, you know, and don't understand what it is? Or can I just say, I don't even know what it is?
Yeah, sure.
So why are we having this conversation? I'm not rejecting it, saying it's wrong. I just don't know. So it's a neutral. It's an atheist or an agnostic position. Jordan's claim when he says this is that they shut down all avenues of God because they don't understand. So if they really knew, they would believe in God, which is just begging the question.
Yeah, well, and I think this really cites to like the real ignorance of Christianity, which is that on the members only podcast or that I just did, we took apart Piers Morgan talking about like how he was talking to Sean Carroll and Eric Weinstein.
Oh, I saw that. You
did see that? Okay, yeah, and toward the end, he asked them that if they believed in God, or like what the existence of God was, or whatever, like to prove that or whatever. And you know, as you saw, like Sean Carroll actually gave like a pretty good answer. He's like, you know, like mathematically, we know that numbers go to infinity and they go negative infinity, so it's not crazy to think that there would be that like time is just infinite, right? And then he's just like, well, what happened before that? What happened before that? And he's like, you don't know, so I'm right. And like this just speaks to the ignorance
what's north of the North Pole.
Yeah,
exactly. Same thing. Literal same question.
Exactly. But this is just the inherent problem with Christianity is like there's always the answer. They always know the answer. It's always on the atheist to give that answer, but they don't have to, unless it's child suffering or like what. And they talked about that later in the video where it's like the morality of war or whatever, or like the was it Jordan Peterson said the blood-soaked past of humanity. When it comes to those like very critical criticisms about religion, then it's like it comes off them, right?
Yeah. It's because fundamentally, I think this, not just because I'm an atheist, but I think philosophically, theism is just bad epistemology. You can't get to truth if you start with something that already has all the answers.
Sure.
And that's why they make that claim, and why Christians fall into that trap. And that's why they think that way. They think if somebody has an answer that is superior just by dint of having an answer than saying, I don't know. It's like, you don't know, well, therefore we'll go with mine. In no other aspect of like life is that the case. You can't just say, I think you have, this thing isn't full of bees. So I'm saying it is full of bees. Well, I'm going to eat it anyways because you don't know for sure. Well, maybe you should just not touch it.
Check if there's bees.
No. He said there is. But that's how it is. So when you say I don't know, they find it unconvincing because they're incurious, because God is a thought terminating cliche. A non-theist is like, okay, we don't know, let's figure it out.
Yeah,
that's different.
Yeah, I think that's good. All right, claim number 2: morality and purpose can't be found within science.
Yeah. So the first and immediate response is, so what?
Yeah.
Even if this claim is true, that doesn't mean that religion has morality and purpose. You could say that it has a bad morality and a bad purpose.
Yeah, sure.
Also, you could also say you can. Actually, I think purpose is subjective, as one of the respondents says there. It is. What my purpose is may be different than what you consider to be your purpose, because we're independent human
100%.
beings. But morality, that's something we create and we can test with scientific claims, right? What has a better result? What leads to less suffering, for example?
Sure.
So you can find ways to make better moral choices through the scientific method that is closed off to the religious person. You brought up abortion. There's other things in the Bible that folks would say they personally don't like, but they have to do, like hating gay people or something like that.
Oh my God.
But you only think that way if you don't leave consequences of your actions open and you just follow what God says. Then you get bad results, and then you have to be questioned on morality.
Yeah, and I maybe we've talked about this in the past, but like the thing with the hating gays, like I hate even like tackling it because it seems like such low hanging fruit to me. Mm-hmm. Like what two people are doing in private.
Yeah,
that's wrong.
This is
consensually.
This is a theistic Abrahamic religion thing. It's awful, I think, because you're right.
Oh yeah.
In the grand scope of humanity, like who cares what two people do or three people do? If they're consenting adults, who cares? Let it go. But you'll notice it's not the atheists who are the ones who are charging for these bad policies. It's not even certain other religious groups. It's always the Christians. It's always the religious, the theists who want to claim dominion over other people.
Well, yeah, and I see a lot of times like on Twitter and stuff, like people will just like sidestep into this idea that like they'll like bring the kids into it, right? Mm-hmm. They'll be like kids that are, oh my God, did you see the Matt Walsh thing that he talked about? He made this abhorrent claim where like he thought that a child in the foster care system going to two gay parents was worse than staying in the foster care system.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me that he would say something like that.
Not at all. But like, it's just such an insane concept to me. Like, okay, let's even give him the olive branch and say that like, if kids are raised in a homosexual environment, that like their mental health is worse or something. Let's even say that that's true. I don't even know if it is, but let's just say it's true. But like, you're really going to say that that's better than sitting in the foster care system where there's more abuse, there's more drug use, there's more unaliving, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Like, you're really going to say that because of the people's sexuality that is automatically worse. Like, I'm maybe there's something I'm missing, but like I cannot wrap my head around why that is so bad.
That's a very, very good point, actually. That's a very good defense, I would say, against a lot of the things that Christians say, whether it be the foster care system, because I've heard similar claims, or whether it be SNAP benefits or something. Is it really worse that somebody gets a benefit for free? Is that worse that an immigrant overstays their visa than they are killed? You know, even if you think it's wrong that somebody sneaks by on the SNAP program or gets in the foster care system or whatever, is that worse than the alternative? And they never have an answer for that, because oftentimes for them the cruelty is the point. They don't really care about the consequence. They just want to make sure that their worldview is reaffirmed. And everybody else who gets hurt, you know, God works in mysterious ways.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Claim 3. Everybody worships something, including atheists, even though they might not know it.
Yeah, this is just a nonsensical claim. There's nothing you could say that could disprove it. This is an unfalsifiable claim. Because he could just say, well, you worship that. He can just change the definition of worship, which he does.
Yes, I saw that.
So, no, as an atheist, I would say I don't think I worship anything in the way that we understand the term worship, right? We respect things, like, or love things, or prefer things. But I don't really, and maybe I'm in the minority, I don't really set time aside in my life and my day to think about heaping imaginary or real praise on something for the sake of giving it praise. That's kind of what I feel like worship is. Like, I like the Iowa State Cyclones, but I don't think about how wonderful they are and how lucky I am that they exist. They're just it's a school and a sports team, right?
Sure.
I can't think of anything that is analogous to what Christians do on Sunday. I can't.
Sure. And obviously, like, if you look at the dictionary term definition, the definition of worship, it is specifically for a deity. But I mean, look, if we're even to take Jordan Peterson's idea of worship, which is a lot less than that, I don't think it's, maybe, this is crazy of me to say, but like, I think I worship, Molly, my fiance, to a certain extent. I think I worship, the people that I love. I mean, no, I'm not like praying in front of them. I'm not like, I don't have a mosque where like I'm bowing down in front of them, but like, I think there is some, she's giving me a side eye right there. She's like, you crazy motherfucker. But, no, I mean, I do think that there is some value to that, at least. Like, I think that is somewhat in the same realm. I mean, like you said, I think the problem with all these questions is like the definition and like where he shifts on that. But
I think we have a word for that. Like, you could say honor. I think
Sure.
I would argue similarly. Like, I honor and respect and care for my wife and my kids, but I don't worship.
Sure.
Them. And so when you say worship, it makes me feel like it's an activity and like a ritual may be involved, and I'm heaping praise. Like when I tell my wife I love her so much and she's so beautiful, I feel like that's honoring and respecting her and setting her apart. But I don't think it's worship, because I don't consider myself lesser than her.
That's a fair point.
In that same way. And some people do. I'm not going to, maybe some folks do. But I would say that's probably more, we have a word honor, and I think that makes more sense than worship.
That's fair.
That's just my take.
No, that's interesting, because as I was saying it, I was like, I can see where somebody would like kind of be like, that's a little weird. But like, I don't know. But like I said, I mean, the whole concept of like saying that I'm worshiping her is you're already taking the definition out of it, right? You're just like, you're doing the same thing Jordan Peterson is doing, which is like, we're going to muddy the waters on the definition, right? So I think honor probably is more of an accurate.
I like that word, but hey, some people do worship though, right? There's a lot of OnlyFans models who make a lot of money doing that. So I am not knocking that. That's a real thing. I get it. And if in those relationships, in those scenarios, you might say worship is a better word, seriously.
Yeah.
But that's not atheists. That's different, right? That's like a relationship or a sexual kink. That's not a claim you would make against an atheist,
Sure. It's kind of a sidestep. Did you see the Glenn Greenwald thing?
He has so much out there, man. What are you talking about?
So this video of his got leaked, because I guess I didn't know this. I guess he's a gay man. Oh. And this video fine. But like, this video got leaked where like he was like dressed in some maid outfit, and he was sucking on toes or something of a male prostitute, and a lot of people were just like, being homophobic and calling him out. I posted on Twitter today, I was like, if this was reversed, if this was a woman doing this exact same thing, you would all be drooling over it and subbing to her OnlyFans.
I think you're correct on that, actually. Yeah. Yeah, people make these jokes about the fetishes, but there's a reason they're there. It's people are doing it, so why don't we accept that we're all human beings?
Exactly.
And just see that it's a thing people like to do, and not leak people's nudes online.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the thing that I care about is like the consent, right? Like, I think the person who posted that video was in the most wrong more than anyone in that situation because, you're breaching that consent, and like. You can make the argument, maybe it was dumb of him to record it, like, sure, but like, they're still like in a private thing, and like that, like as the terms of that being filmed, there was still like an agreement and understanding there, and then there was one party who broke that, and like that's, I mean, he obviously wasn't involving kids in that or anything like that, so there wasn't any breach of consent in that. So I was just going on people at Twitter, like. Come on, man! Like this, like every argument, it just comes down to homophobia.
It's just homophobia, yeah.
Yeah, it literally is.
Somebody else down. Yep.
As long as people are consensual, I do not give a shit. That's the only thing I care about. Okay, claim number, we didn't do this one. Claim number 4: atheists accept Christian morality but deny the religion's foundational stories.
Yeah, so Christian morality, there's so much wrong with this one because there's aspects of it that I think even Jordan Peterson doesn't think is moral in Christianity, like slavery, right?
Yeah.
Child sacrifice, hitting women, owning people, burning people's fields, being able to trick people into becoming your servant, all sorts of nonsense that's in the Bible. No, I don't think atheists or even most Christians accept Christian morality because Christian morality is bad. I will say it. I think the religion itself is bad. The fundamental tenets of the faith are harmful and bad. The idea that you're born sick and demanded to be well by an all-powerful God who forced you to pay for the sins of some people who didn't exist is nonsense. So no, I don't think most atheists and Christians accept that morality. However, what I think he means is that, you guys have similar values to other people who say they're Christian. I think a lot of the values that we have in what we call Christian America and in the West are humanist values with the Christian veneer over them because people don't think about it very hard.
I agree.
People, if to quote Hitchens, if you really thought that Christian morality was necessary to be a good person and to have a society, then the Christianity could have never gotten off the ground because all those people were already a society when they got to Mount Sinai. When they started having these tenets written down, they already knew killing was wrong and theft was wrong. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been a society. They would have killed themselves out decades ago. So this idea is just nonsense, and it's just religion, once again, taking credit for things that human beings do.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I criticized this in the podcast I did, but there was one point where the guy actually does call him out for the slavery thing. Mm-hmm. And he's like, are these Christian ethics? He's like, no, they're not. And it's like, well, like, how is this made? Like, your claim, and his response was like, well, the Judeo-Christian values are what, like, caused the end of slavery or whatever. And it's like that. First of all, I don't really think that's accurate necessarily. I mean, if you look at like what happened in America specifically, there was a civil war, and the federal government declared that slavery was illegal. And maybe you could make the argument that like in America there still are forms of slavery, but like when we're talking about like specifically white men owning black men, having them cater to their every need, like that was abolished by the federal government, right? Rightfully so. And I just like that's not, and people will make the claim that it's like, oh well, America's a Christian nation and like it was really Christianity that was behind it. It's like, no, not really. It wasn't like the church was like, okay, like it wasn't like the church did that, right? It was the government that then put that forth.
This is such a bad argument for Christians to make too, because who are they liberating the slaves from?
Yeah,
Christians. Like it's such a dumb argument. I get so frustrated with this because every argument and every issue, whether it is slavery, abortion, gay rights, medical research, women's rights, every time Christians will point out to some Christians like, oh, they fought on the side of this. Cool. There are good people who happen to be Christian, but every time, and I mean every time, especially in American history, the bad guys are Christians. So it's not all Christians are bad guys, but all the bad guys they're always Christian. It's always the Christians who are trying to segregate schools again. It's always Christians trying to ban abortion, ban same-sex marriage. The Christians who were the biggest fighters for slavery back in the Civil War. So to say that it was Christian values that somehow overcame Christian values, because that's what it is, to get rid of slavery, is nonsense. But if you flip it and you look at what the organized atheists and humanists were doing, they're always on the right side. They may not be the biggest or the most well-funded or the most well-connected, but there's no, in American Western history, there's no, I don't want to say no, because we don't know everybody's mind.
Sure.
There hasn't been an organized, secular, atheist, humanist movement that has pushed for taking away rights of people. They've always been on the side of more rights. I mean, American Atheists, one of the largest atheist organizations in the country, got started marching alongside suffragettes and abortion rights access because they realized as humanists, having more rights is better for humanity versus sticking to religious roots. So when people cite the Bible as the reason for overcoming slavery, that's just, not only is it untrue, it's just so dishonest because you're showing how ignorant you are, because a lot are ignorant, they don't know any better.
Yeah, definitely.
Or they do know better and they just don't want to talk about it because they want their flavor to be in favor rather than realizing it's a humanist idea.
It's an emotional reaction. And I think I think this goes for both religion and I might disagree in this, but like the law aspect too. I think a lot of times it does come from an emotional place. Like, I feel like this is the right thing, so we're gonna do this because I feel like it's right. And I think between the law and the religion thing, you could argue that there's more logic in law, because it at least deals with like what's happening in the present, right? Like, they're not just like going off the book or like whatever, right? But I mean, look, let's even talk about the Crusades, right? Let's I don't really know if this is actually the case, but like how they will paint it will be like the Muslim countries were doing all these awful things to people, had all these slaves, and the Christians came in and saved them. The process of saving them included killing 12 million people. Like, is that what you're telling me? Like, look, if you wanted to come, like, if they had like actually gone and like taken people and just taken them back to their land and done it like with at the least amount of violence possible, then I could maybe wrap my head around that. But like, the process of doing the right thing was killing 12 million people. Yeah. Like, how can you ignore that?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Crusades and things like it, it's never, as you say, the goal isn't like, oh, there's a bunch of slaves in this area, let's go liberate them. Yeah, right. No, it's let's go get this place that has a lot of money and plunder, and let's get this icon, this religious site.
It's an afterthought.
Exactly. It's just a justification for killing people. I think this Crusades is crazy when. I don't know how a Christian can argue that it's like inherently moral to be Christian when that happened like 7 times, like a lot.
Yeah.
And it was
they still do. They still do, Jason. I see them online all the time.
That's true. I mean, that's what we're dealing with, with Christian nationalism. That's what it is.
Oh yeah.
You can't you can't win with ideas, so use force. You mentioned law and religion. I think sometimes law, it's the same way though. I mean, there's a lot of laws that are, or citations that are religious claims, to justify changing a law.
Sure.
Because of my religious claims, this is what the law means. In Texas, they're trying to pass that 10 Commandments in every classroom thing. And the lady who was advocating it for it, the guy's like, do you think we should all, like, if somebody opens up a public school on a Sunday to clean it up for the school week, should like that be illegal? I mean, that's working on the Sabbath. They're not keeping the Sabbath holy. And she's like, well, we just know that this country was founded on American values, so it'll be okay. Like, that's not an answer. That was a real question about your faith, and you just wave it away because you don't care. Yeah. About what happens at the school. You just want to show supremacy of Christian ideas. And so they're trying to change the law to just fit their emotional needs rather than what's best for people.
Yeah, well, and I think that's kind of, I don't know if those, I mean, frankly, you might disagree with this. I don't know if those two ideas are ever really separable, like realistically separable. Like, I think there will always be laws put in place because of a religion or the other way around, right? Like we talk about like separation of church and state. I don't think that's actually a thing. I don't believe that.
You don't think so?
Well, I don't think it actually ever happens in practice. No.
Yeah, so it's the one unique thing that the United States did, right? Is a secular government. It's not democracy, not separation of powers, not states or federalism. The power is derived from the people and not a god. That's the one unique thing that the United States did. I think it's possible, and I think a lot of the thinkers, when they wrote that down, were really looking at the Enlightenment and seeing if there was a way to turn away from that and have a separation of church and state where we'd have august and well-reasoned philosophers come to the table and find the best solution. But to your point, we have seen that religious folks are kind of opposed to that.
Yeah.
They're opposed to that philosophical discussion because if they have the answer, right? They already have the answer. They don't need to think about it. So that, I think, is where the problem is. It's not that separation of church and state can't be there. It's that religion, theism in particular, is inherently opposed to that. Because if we really have a separation of church and state, I don't think religion can survive. Why would somebody appeal to a religious text when they want to go get their driver's license? It makes no sense. But that's what religious folks need to do to keep it front and center so that it is centered in there. And that's why I oppose Christian nationalism and want that wall of separation of church and state there. Because if tomorrow we just elected a whole new slate and they're all Democrats, Republicans, whatever, but they're all atheists and they don't care about religion, you would see an improvement in the laws because you would just have the nonsense, the culture war stuff just gone. They would just tell the churches, shut up. We're going to figure out how to fix renewable energy. We're going to figure out how to make sure all the women have health care. We don't care about what your book says. You do that at home. That's cool. Don't let your daughter do that. Fine. But that's not the world we live in. But I think it's possible.
Sure. I guess the one point I want to object to is if you look at the Soviet Union, I think a lot of time, and it's actually interesting, Christians will argue that socialism had no religion. That's why we need religion. Although actually in World War II, the Soviet Union did embrace Christianity for a brief amount of time to invigorate people to help fight their cause. Right. I do think sometimes when law goes to its fullest extent, when you have something that is akin to a socialist society where it's this is the rule of law, no ifs, ands, or buts. If we catch you with bread, we're going to rob your bread and all that. I think in the absence of that, people naturally tend to find religion because when they have nothing, then they create something for an emotional sense. You know what I mean?
And that seems to me seems natural and normal. I appreciate that, right? You don't know where the thunder comes from, so you're going to create a story on where the thunder comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
I get that. I think Alex O'Connor had a really good response to that point where somebody brings up the Soviet Union and what an atheist government looks like. I think he's correct in that it was an atheist government, but it wasn't secular because they were anti, not just God, but they were anti-competing power structures. And guess what's the biggest competing power structure to a secular government? Churches. And so Stalin and all them, they didn't hate God so much because they thought it was silly and nonsense in the books, although they probably did. It was because they were competing power structures where if the church had to do something, they didn't have control over the population. So they had to get rid of the church to scare, put the fear of God into them, except God isn't them, it's the state. So I think it's an atheist state, but it wasn't secular because the state religion was basically Stalinism.
Interesting.
And I think that's very different when you put it up against a constitution where you bounce all your laws off of that and say that's your stop. If it violates these things like the freedom of speech, well then if you follow the First Amendment, Stalinism is impossible. If you follow the First Amendment, right? That's the trouble.
Well, and I think that's the ruffle of it, right? Right now I'm reading this book called Empire of Liberty, which takes place from 1789 to 1815. And I've been really delving into post-revolutionary war because I find it fascinating how I think a lot of people just don't understand that time period. We have a very almost religious way of thinking about it, right? We had the Revolutionary War and then everybody was free.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, and then that wasn't at all the case. Years after, I'm not even years. Within 1 year of the Revolutionary War ending, we had the Federalists, we had all these people, George Washington, all these people were they just took the same kind of power that the English did, right? George Washington is literally the only president to get every like to get every single vote. You know why? Because he was friends with everybody.
Exactly.
He had like huge. Yeah. He had huge parties where he had everybody from his government there. It's like, yeah, of course they're gonna fucking vote for him, right? So I mean, I forget what my point was with that, but I think it's.
I like that point though.
It's just it's really interesting that people will like paint that. Oh yeah, this was my point. Is that fuck no? I lost it. I'm not even stoned, dude. I'm not even stoned. I'm losing my points.
I love that point. That's such a cool thing that you're bringing up, though, about the post-revolutionary war. Because from a certain perspective, if you look at the revolution and how it went down, George Washington, all those bros, right? It wasn't. We don't know their mind, but
sure.
you could look at what they did, and it seemed less that like they were interested in liberating everybody and creating freedom for everybody. It was more like, I see a really good racket here where you guys are getting beaver and you're trading with these people, and we can have the slave trade and we can make all this wealth and profit and we can build these and start industrializing all that. Why are we going to let the British do this? We'll just be the owners of this stuff. And so that's what it was about. It was about kicking out the old bosses so that they could become the new boss. So yeah, we can paint a picture of liberty and tyranny, which was true. The British was definitely abusing the colonies.
Sure.
But then what happened as soon as they got into power? They turned around and did the exact same. What was George Washington's first military action after being the president? To go put down a farmers' revolt because they weren't getting all the promises that he promised them during the revolution.
Oh, was that not the Whiskey Rebellion?
It might be the Whiskey Rebellion. That might be what it's called, but it's something similar. That was the first military action he did, was to turn the troops against the populace because they were going to fuck up his business plans. That's literally it.
And you know what's crazy? If what you're talking about is the Whiskey Rebellion, the thing that's crazy about that is at the time that was the biggest show of military force in the United States. Yeah. Bigger than anything in the Revolutionary War. Mm-hmm. Literally because people didn't want to pay taxes on their whiskey. They were like, all right, we're going to come over and fuck you up.
Like, I thought we won a war for this. Like, you won a war for this so that I get the taxes and not British. So
yeah, and I think that I'm remembering my point now. I think like, you know, we can talk about like, you know, the Constitution and all these things and be like, these things add up. Like, you know, these things, you know, there's like a order or whatever for things, but like, I don't know if that ever actually happens.
Correct.
To ever 100% degree, right? Like, like I said, like we can paint this story of liberty, we can paint this idea that like America's a free country, but if you really look at these things, like I seriously encourage anybody to read anything Revolutionary War, because like similarly to how a lot of Christians like won't even read the Bible and they'll just think, oh, this is what happened. Like if you actually read it, you're like, oh, this is actually pretty fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, the Aliens and Seditions Act, right? The people who signed the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights are the same people who passed the law to arrest people without habeas corpus because they didn't want foreign assets. Like, come on, like these guys didn't even live up to their own ideals.
No, and they never do. And I think people are just inherently selfish.
I think that's probably true.
And you know, I like someone else you probably don't like, Ayn Rand. She wrote this book called The Virtue of Selfishness. Yes, and one of the things that I found interesting, and again, I know you disagree with this, but one of the things that I found really interesting about it is like, she sets up these scenarios where like, you know, let's say me and Molly have someone with a gun to her head and they're like, I'm going to shoot one of you. And I beg that I don't want her to be shot. I want me to be shot. Somebody can look at that and think that's virtuous, but that's truly selfish. I'm truly just picking, like, I don't want to live a life without her because that would be so much worse than me ending my life right now. So there is something selfish about that, but it's also good, right? And I think selfishness isn't inherently bad. I think it can be a very good thing. I think the problem is when you have those selfish actions be forced on people. Like when you control the law or you control the church and you say, okay, I'm going to use these things to my own benefit by forcing people to do things. I think that's different from like, let's say you have a business and you want to make money from that, right? But like in you making money from that business, you're also helping people in the community. You're also giving them a product that makes their lives easier, right? And I know it's not always that black and white. Like there will always be selfishness, but I think that selfishness is way less harmful than selfishness through the state or through the church. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. Like the idea of finding incentives to get people to do things in a way that it's selfish for them, but it also has these spin-off effects of
exactly
things. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, and I know that's been part of objectivism in Ayn Rand and in her ilk for a while.
And I want to say I'm not an objectivist by any means. Like there are plenty of things that I don't agree with, but I do take pieces of what that book specifically. Pieces of what she said, and I like that.
Nietzsche, it was kind of similar into that way of, you gotta kind of own it up and figure out what the best thing is for yourself, or else you won't get anywhere.
Yeah.
The problem with that, I think, and what she misses is that other people exist, and that there are consequences to what you may think is being selfish that could be directly harmful to not only yourself but to other folks. And if we build a society on that, then we run into a hyper-capitalist place where people are incentivized to, I don't care if it gets dumped into the ocean. I want my oil money, right? That's kind of where that leads to. That's why she liked capitalism so much. I think great for you, but that doesn't mean that we're going to have a sustainable and a world that is good for everybody,
Yeah, but don't you think that a lot of that happens through the state? Like you have like this, like the whole reason that they were able to dump oil into this is because they had certain contracts and they had certain legal backings. They have high capitals, and then they use their lawyers to, game the system that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could put that as the fault of the state, though. I think it's still the fault of the capital, because capital was going to do it anyways. Without a state, capital would just do it anyways, right?
I don't necessarily agree with that.
I would argue that history shows that they do, and I would also argue that capital wouldn't be able to have a pipeline or oil infrastructure in this example if there wasn't a state. Because why are there no multi-billion-dollar oil companies in underdeveloped areas? Because you need some kind of stability, currency, security, stability, taxation, regulation, standardization. There's a lot of things that private entities can't do themselves. So without a state, I don't think you could have an oil company to even do that. So there is an obligation the other way towards the state that made it possible for you to have the oil pipeline, to rein it in, to make sure that they're sustainable, not just environmental, but like just don't destroy the world, right? And the problem is, if the state is captured by capital, well then, the state is no different than capital, right? If the oil company owns the state, well then obviously the state's the problem. But we have a word for that. It's called fascism.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And that's why fascism is so aligned with capitalism. So when you criticize the state for doing bad actions like that, I think you're really critiquing what would be considered fascism in capital. Yeah.
Sure, but I mean, I think without the state, though, you would have more. There would be more apparent consequences if there wasn't a state. If you, as like a, capitalist nut job who has all his money and wants to take over whatever, like you're gonna have people criticize that. Sure. I mean, eventually there will be another market that will open up that will say, okay, you don't like evil dictator. Excuse me, Coleman coming in to do this. We'll have Jason. We'll have Jason, who has a whole other market. He has a whole other thing. And I know you can say like people will look the other way, and that may be true to an extent. But I think if it's like you don't shit where you eat, right? Like if you're gonna like damage the entire community because of this, then like that's going to come back negatively on you.
So you're forgetting the temporal aspect of this, though, right?
Okay.
Because like in a hypothetical, like if we're in Des Moines and this just founded, right, and we're doing this and we're polluting the river, right, and it's going to ruin it for everybody. This actually happened, and you know what all the people that did that did? They just went to West Des Moines, where you can't get me. And then when that got too bad, well, it's went out to Waukee, Or now I'm 80 years old, it's all built up, and I'm old, and everything's all fucked. I was retired to California or Arizona or Florida, right?
Sure.
And that's the temporal part of it. So there's no way for me to hold certain folks accountable, because things have already happened, that all the people who happen to settle by the river who don't own that polluting business, they just suffer. They're just screwed.
Yeah, but you don't think you can educate those other people? You don't think you could say like, "Oh, hey,
bring that up." Yeah.
Okay.
Guess who doesn't want that to happen?
The capitalists.
Bingo.
Sure. But
welcome to private school vouchers. I mean, literally.
Sure.
Do you think they're going to teach any kids this stuff that we're talking about? No.
Well, no. But like, I think a big part of that is because of the state system. Because we have this state model, we have this public model. Like, there are private schools, but they all have to adhere to those public models.
No,
they don't.
They don't. No. And do you know what a company?
But I mean, they all like have to take the SAT and shit. Like that's part of that.
No, man. That's
You
not
don't
true.
think so?
No, they don't. They are actually, a lot of them are exempted from it. They might have to take the standardized, like the ITBS or
Okay,
ITEDS.
well, sure. That's my. I mean, that's
is that what you meant?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
Sorry,
okay.
like that. Like that's still like a standard that they have. Like, so there is still a standard that they have to adhere to. It's not entirely private.
They have to take the test, but there's no enforcement mechanism because they're private.
Sure.
So like if a public school fails a test and like, tax, we're going to fire the superintendent and get rid of the school board, et cetera. If it's a private school, they might not even have to turn over the results to you, the public. They might have to turn it to the Department of Education.
Sure.
But there may not be a requirement that they turn it over to the public and make it public. They could sue to keep it private, or they may just opt out and say, you know what? We're just going to take our voucher and peace out. That's what they're trying to do, is make it so they can completely peace out. And I bring up company towns too, because that's actually what happened. Is they would have company schools. I mean, your dad lives in a place that is a mining town in rural Idaho, and they want to go to school. A miner's wife, hey, you have some education. Teach these kids. You're going to teach them what you know. And then they don't know about the history of the Civil War. They don't know the history of labor rights or what a weekend is. They're going to be more than happy to go into that mine when they're 17 because they don't know any different. That's the problem with the capital capture. So forget the state. If you let the capitalists do it, that's what you get.
Yeah, but like in the day and age of the internet, I mean, I think that's way less of a
they probably
problem.
Wouldn't even have internet access, man. In that scenario, there's people right now who are probably in Des Moines who went to school from age, kindergarten up to high school, who never saw an unfiltered internet. They are on Truth Social, they're on Facebook, and they don't trust any news sites that you and I might be familiar with because they just don't have a need for them. They get all their needs met with their own ecosystem. I mean, it's scary and dystopian, but it's true, man.
That is true, but I don't know. I think you and I just disagree on this ultimately.
Sure.
But I do think that yes, there are echo chambers. Yes, there are these structures that come from individuals and capitalists, and like they have their own vested interests, so they're going to abide to that. Sure, but the internet didn't come from government. The internet was a. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it's like one of the best crowning achievements of government funding.
Sure?
Yeah. DARPANET. If you want to Google DARPANET.
Okay.
Yeah. DARPANET. It started back in the 80s. It was
created by an individual company, right? It wasn't like there was like a department. Am I wrong on this?
It wasn't like the Department of the Internet. It was DARPANET. You could see ARPANET should give it to you.
Okay.
It's the first wide area switch network. It was a defense thing so that military bases could talk to each other without needing phone lines.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then the technology got contracted out, and then you had the innovation, and then you had the explosion. Google started that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Government contracts. Now, it's not saying it's like the president's in the office who's like, I'm coming up with this. It's just, it's public funding is what it is. It's government funding and grants to nonprofits to just say, forget the profit motive, figure this out. And they did.
Okay, that's interesting. And that is like a point that I can wrap my head around, like from the pro-government position is it's true that like capitalists do whatever, but like a lot of technological innovations like do happen to come from government. Like that is like a real thing that I think is interesting. I guess it's an interesting philosophical question as to like whether humans would be able to figure that out on their own, or if they need the government to be able to do something like the internet. Like, I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, I'm sure you have your opinion on that.
I just think the government is people, right? It is made up of people, and I mean, we've seen awesome things from the government invented and some not so awesome things invented by the government. So I just see the government as an extension of people. I just think it works best when it's transparent and closer to the people rather than top down,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, I guess my position would be I view people as individuals, not as collectives. I think that's probably a big difference between you and me is I'm Coleman, you're Jason, Molly's the producer. And like the only way that like we could all be forced to do something together is like through the government. Like even if there was like let's say like evil capitalist Coleman came in and was like there's still an incentive in that, right? There's still a choice in that. Like I can choose to go with the guy, or I can choose the other way around, which may be negative, which may not be good. Sure. But also, I don't think that like there's such thing as a utopia.
No, I don't think so either. No,
I'm not saying you do.
Yeah. I would say with my point to that. Oh, there it is. It's on the bottom of the screen. How the internet was born, from the ARPANET to the internet. That's probably the best one.
You want to click that, Molly? The conversation.
Look at that cool graphic. But yeah, it's going to go into the details. But yeah,
Sure,
it started. This is what started the internet. The idea TCP and all TCP/IP. I would encourage you for your next book is to read up on the East India Tea Company.
Okay.
Do that, and then we can talk about what capital looks like unfettered from government.
Okay.
Because that's what that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna read a book by Michael Mouse when it comes out, but after that, I will read.
Okay. Yeah.
I will read your book. He's a big anarchist guy, and I like a lot of his stuff.
I'm familiar.
You are familiar with him? Okay.
I know who he is and heard some of his stuff on podcasts and some of his articles. Never read his books though. Yeah.
He's a cool. I highly recommend The White Pill. It's a very the thing that's good about that book is like he doesn't insert any of his anarchism into it. It's simply just like, this is the history of the Soviet Union from the Bolsheviks, Lenin, like to the fall of the wall. And I think he does a very good job, like just laying it all out. Like he is an anarchist. There are definitely books where he, maybe not preaches that, but like shows that evidence, but this is not that at all. Like it's simply just it's what he says is a tale of good and evil, basically. That's what he frames it as. The rise and fall of the Soviet Union. I recommend that book. But yeah, so we're coming up on the hour. Before we wrap up, I want to get your opinion. I'm sure you're familiar with Democratic candidate Rob Sand for Iowa. I'm curious if you know anything about him, what you know about him. I'm curious what your take is on him.
I mean, I like Rob. I think he'd be a good governor. I don't want to endorse anybody at this point.
Sure. I'm not trying to get you to do that.
But no, I like him. In particular, I really like Rob's big voice on ranked choice voting, if you're familiar with that. I think ranked choice voting is really the only way to have a true democracy where you actually have your vote count. He's been a long advocate of that. I would love to see him carry that into his campaign, because that is something that should be nonpartisan. Everybody should like the idea of your vote mattering no matter what, whether your candidate's unpopular or not, your vote should still count, so you're never throwing it away. First past the post voting results in undemocratic policy. Just straight up, it does. It's bad. So I like that about Rob. As more of the campaign comes on, I'd like to see what he has to say.
Yeah. One thing I do really like I have criticized him a little bit with some of his stances on education and stuff, but one thing I really do like about him is he's the first candidate that I can remember in Iowa, like at least in my time, talking about the legalization of cannabis.
Yes, that's true.
He said he wants to treat it like alcohol. I do kind of worry about like the taxation of it and all that kind of thing with that. Like if he's going to just do what Illinois did and just jack up the taxes, right? Mm-hmm. But I still think legalization, even with that model, is a way better step than throwing people in prison for that. Like even DeGier, the last Democratic candidate for governor, she couldn't even give an answer on cannabis. So I think this is a huge step.
Problem. Yeah, I think you're right. This is low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
there's no reason cannabis should be criminalized the way it is now. I mean, have you been to a state where it's legal? Have you been?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Is it just burning down and everybody's dying and it's just falling? No. When you get too high, you eat too many, chips. When you get too drunk, you drive drunk and kill people. There's no comparison. Cannabis is so much safer.
Yeah.
And less bad for you than alcohol.
Oh,
by
easily.
Every metric.
I honestly can't believe people even still make that argument.
It's so silly. It's just you're gonna love this.
Okay.
Coleman. Did you see the Texas lieutenant governor?
I did see that. Yes.
Would you want to eat this whole bag? One, read the label. Eat one at a time, dummy. And then two, yes. Could you imagine what would happen? One marijuana will turn you into a zombie. Dude, are you from 1972? Like, you're in 2025. He's saying that with a straight face. That's the reality these people are in.
Well, you know what? I don't even think it's reality. I don't even think he's being honest. I think he's...
Oh, you think he knows better?
Yeah. I think in 2025 you have to be.
I think you have to know better.
Okay, either you know better or you are so stupid that you should not be a government official.
But I mean, he gets elected. So there are people in Texas who are like, like what are you?
Sure.
Are you?
I mean, it's the same thing in Iowa too. There's plenty of people like that too in Iowa. Yeah.
We go to just send all our tax dollars to Illinois, Minnesota, and Missouri. That's a big brain move.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think a lot of people, like Matt Walsh, I think has got this wrong a lot of times. I've listened to way more of him than I care to have, honestly. But what like he will always and just people in his camp, I think they will like take cities that have legalized it and they will look at the sorry state of that city or that state or whatever and they'll blame it on cannabis. Like, you know, like they'll take like California. It's like, oh, California is like this because drugs are legalized. It's like, no, not really. And in my opinion, I think it's because there is all this abundance of, you know, welfare and state programs that like kind of just allow people to, you know, have unfettered money essentially. And you might disagree with this,
but it's okay. I get it. It's
but
not
like
the cannabis.
But it's not the it's not the fault of the cannabis. Like I think there's other reasons beyond just the fact that like everybody's getting high and that's why I think that's just such a childlike way of looking at things.
It's designed to scaremonger people who fearmonger people who don't know any better, right? I mean, I really wish we could do like a live with a Matt Walsh or a Kim Reynolds. It's like, let's go to Denver. We're gonna go into a dispensary and we're just gonna here's $20. We're gonna have you pick something out and then you're gonna come out here to this picnic table and you're gonna consume it. Yeah, and we'll just talk for 2 hours. And it'll be fine. You'll find out that this is fine, and this is what you're putting people in jail for. Really, this is what you don't want your state to have, or why the state is bad. You know, turn it into a tax thing. Colorado, huge surplus from cannabis. I mean, it's not infinite, but it's way better than it was. Those dollars go into the school system is better than the prison system for people who use cannabis. So it's just a no-brainer. So yes, Rob Sand is good on that point.
Yes, definitely. Well, and you know, something, if you compare, I would be willing to bet, take any dispensary in America and compare it to your average liquor store. So much cleaner, so much more professional.
Correct. You're not wrong.
There's not a bulletproof glass.
Because people don't get all riled up to get there. No, they're fine. They're just like, hey, man. I was so jealous. I see people in California on 420. They're like, yep, it's 420. Oh, the weed's at the door already. Like, they deliver it. They DoorDash their weed. And here we got to drive, you know, a time zone and a half to get the good stuff. It's ridiculous.
You know, dispensary was at one point delivering. But I don't think
they were.
Yeah, but I know their business really took a hit because
they outlawed all that packaging. You know?
Well, the packaging and like they were technically operating illegally. Like they were selling flour, which they weren't technically allowed. It was like the Delta 9 flour, but like they were
synthetic,
not technically allowed to do that. And there were rumors that they were selling real weed out the back door. Whatever, I don't care about that. But like the state. You know, they saw that and they basically targeted that business.
Because they're the only one that was doing it, yeah.
Exactly. So I think that kind of hurt that. But like, yeah, I remember I had the Delta 9 gummies ordered to my house and I was like, ooh, nice. It just came home.
Yeah,
so, you know, I hope people at least do that more with legal cannabis. And, you know, if Rob Sand becomes governor, hopefully that is something that is a reality.
Well, I think that'd be really cool to see. He gets governor, you apply to be his cannabis czar. And oversee and implement. Just go travel to other states, see how they do it, and open them up here.
Yeah, it's not very anarchist of me, Jason. So I don't know if I would do that.
But think of all the good you could do.
I'll talk about it on my podcast. Yeah, I'll do that. Oh, man, Jason, this was an awesome time. I love having you through.
Can I plug something real quick?
Sure, yes, just please.
Real quick, if this goes out before it, we have the Iowa Secular Summit coming up. It's on the 14th.
This is coming out Wednesday, so this will definitely be out before that.
Okay, awesome. Iowa Secular Summit. Go to iowasecularssummit.org. It's our annual event where we're going to have people come and talk about things. This year, we're going to have lobbyists who were in the Capitol for all year. We're going to have Aaron Ra come talk about devolution. We're going to have a speaker for Braver Angels talk about building bridges with people that you don't always agree with and meeting with different folks. And then we're going to have folks talk about how they get along with different communities that oppose them. Some religious folks and religious groups like the Interfaith Alliance and One Iowa will be there. Tickets are $40. We give you lunch. It's all day. It's the same day as the No Kings protest. So if you want to hit the protest and then come over to the Secular Summit, you can get your tickets at iowasecularssummit.org.
Just because I don't know, what's the No Kings protest?
Not my thing. It's supposed to be this huge protest against Trump, I guess, on the 14th from like 11 to 1. You remember the really big ones that happened like a month ago?
Yes.
Like in the beginning of May.
Yep.
Like that.
Similar to that. Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, Jason, thanks again for coming through. Yeah. I really appreciate it as always. We'll have you back. Guys, McAllister's podcast, we're doing at least 1 to 2 episodes a week, including game live streams. I try to do a members only stream or video every weekend as well, every Sunday, so the Lord's Day. So come tune into that. And yeah, have a good night, everybody. Peace out.